Imagine for a moment that you're sitting in the audience of the world's most intricate, high-stakes theater production, one where the stage spans the heavens and the cast includes gods, stars, planets, and, well, you. From the moment you were born, you've been watching a show scripted by the cosmos itself, a performance that plays out every day right above your head. The plot, life, death, rebirth, and everything in between. The twist? The real story has been hidden in plain sight, masked by myth and religion, all while we sit back and take it at face value. But what if I told you there's a behind the scenes tour? Jordan Maxwell spent decades showing us that if you just peek behind the cosmic curtain, you'd realize that these symbols, rituals, and stories we hold dear, from the cross to the rising sun, are all part of a far grander, celestial narrative, one that's been playing on loop since ancient Egypt, through Rome, and right up to modern Christianity. So settle in, the lights are dimming, and the universe is about to give you a front row seat to the God Show, the ancient cosmic theater that we've been actors in without ever reading the full script. And trust me, this isn't your average Sunday service.
In a world seeking light amidst darkness, we enlighten minds, we awaken souls. Together we ignite the spark of transformation. For when you confront your own shadow, you unveil your inner light. Humanfluence, creating a new reality.
Let's get right into it. The story of Jesus, the miracles, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. It's familiar to almost everyone. But when you start peeling back the layers, as Jordan Maxwell did throughout his life, you begin to realize that these stories aren't just about a man in ancient Palestine. There's something much deeper going on, something cosmic, something that ties into ancient symbolism, astro-theology, and even the cycles of the stars. He made it clear what we know as Christianity is deeply connected to much older spiritual and mythological traditions, often rooted in ancient sun worship, Egyptian theology, and the movements of celestial bodies. But that's just scratching the surface. There's much more when you look at the symbols and stories that have been woven into these religious stories. Let's break it down. We'll start with the solar cross, one of the most ancient and powerful symbols in human history. If you've seen a cross inside a circle, you're looking at the solar cross, which represents the sun's journey through the four seasons: the winter solstice, summer solstice, and the spring and fall equinoxes. Now, for ancient people, the sun wasn't just a source of life, it was life itself. The sun's cycle represented the death and rebirth of nature, something sacred and divine. When you look at Jesus' crucifixion through this lens, it starts to look like more than just an execution. Maxwell often pointed out that the crucifixion symbolizes the death of the sun at the winter solstice, the darkest time of the year, when the sun reaches its lowest point in the sky. Around December 21st, the sun appears to die for 3 days, before starting to rise again around December 25th, traditionally celebrated as the birth of Jesus. This isn't a coincidence. It's part of an ancient tradition where solar deities die and are reborn as part of the cosmic cycle. Maxwell showed how these themes weren't unique to Christianity. In fact, ancient Egyptians, Persians, and even the early Romans had stories of gods who followed this same cycle of death and rebirth, notably Horus in Egypt and Mithras in Persia. All of these deities, like Jesus, are tied to the sun's movement and its profound symbolism. This is where things get particularly interesting. Maxwell often pointed out that the connection between Jesus as the S-O-N, Son of God, and the S-U-N isn't just linguistic. It's a deeply symbolic reflection of the role the sun plays in our lives. Think about it. Jesus is called the light of the world, just as the sun literally brings light to the world. Without the sun, life wouldn't exist. And in the same way, the Son of God brings spiritual light to humanity. But it goes deeper than that. The idea of the S-U-N versus the S-O-N isn't just clever wordplay. It represents the connection between cosmic energy and divine energy. For ancient cultures, the sun was often seen as divine because it controlled the seasons, life, death, and the cycles of nature. The Son of God in this narrative is symbolic of the same forces. He dies, is buried, and rises again, just like the sun during the solstice. Maxwell was careful to point out that this doesn't diminish the spiritual significance of Jesus. It actually enriches it. His life, death, and resurrection reflect universal truths that civilizations across the globe recognized, tying him into something much older and more universal than just a historical figure. Let's look at the miracles of Jesus through this cosmic lens. For example, when Jesus walks on water, it's more than just a display of divine power. Maxwell pointed out that this act is symbolic. Every day we see the sun walking on water as it rises and sets over the ocean, reflecting its light on the surface. The sun, representing the divine, bridges the gap between heaven and earth. In the same way, Jesus walks on water, symbolizing his role as the connection between the divine and the human, between the spiritual and the physical. Next is the story of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. On the surface, it's a story of miraculous abundance, but there's more going on here. The 2 fishes are symbolic of the age of Pisces, the astrological age we're currently living in, and the 5 loaves represent the 5 visible planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, which were central to ancient astrological and religious practices. This is no mere coincidence. Jesus' ministry takes place during the age of Pisces, an age marked by spirituality, sacrifice, and salvation. The loaves and fishes then are cosmic symbols reflecting a deeper, universal message about spiritual nourishment. One of the more mind-blowing aspects of Maxwell's work is how he connects these stories to the broader cycles of astrological ages. These ages, Taurus, Pisces, Aquarius, and so on, last for roughly 2,150 years, and each are part of a greater 26,000-year cycle known as the precession of the equinoxes. These ages aren't just arbitrary, they represent shifts in human consciousness, spirituality, and society. The age of Taurus, from 4300 to 2150 BCE, was marked by the worship of bulls and fertility. Cultures like the Egyptians and Mesopotamians venerated the bull, a symbol of strength and fertility, which is why we see the bull imagery in early religious texts. The golden calf that the Israelites worshipped in the Bible was a remnant of this Taurian age, a time when the bull symbolized divine power. When Moses destroyed the golden calf, it symbolized a rejection of the old age and the ushering in of a new spiritual order. The age of Pisces, which we're still in, began around 1 AD and is symbolized by the fish, a key symbol in Christianity. Pisces is about compassion, sacrifice, and spirituality, which aligns perfectly with the story of Jesus, who called himself a fisher of men and whose followers used the fish as a secret symbol. Maxwell emphasized how Jesus' life and teachings reflect the Piscean values of spiritual enlightenment and the promise of salvation through sacrifice. The age of Aquarius, which we are transitioning into, is often seen as a time of knowledge, awakening, and collective consciousness. The water bearer of Aquarius isn't pouring out literal water, but rather knowledge and spiritual truth, bringing humanity into a new age of understanding. According to Maxwell, the coming of Aquarius will mark a shift away from the spiritual self-sacrifice of Pisces and into a time of intellectual and spiritual awakening. These astrological ages show how human consciousness evolves over millennia, and Jesus' story in this context isn't just about one man. It's a cosmic shift in how humanity relates to the divine. A significant part of his work focused on the Egyptian influence on Christianity. He often said that if you want to understand where Christianity came from, you have to look at ancient Egypt. The stories of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, especially the death and resurrection of Horus, mirror the story of Jesus in uncanny ways. For instance, Horus, the Egyptian sun god, was said to be born of a virgin, his mother Isis, and was considered the savior of his people. His life was marked by a constant struggle with the forces of darkness, in this case, his uncle Set. Much like Jesus' battle with evil. And just like Jesus, Horus was a symbol of light, often depicted with a halo or sun disk over his head, representing the sun's power and divine presence. Maxwell pointed out that the Egyptian influence doesn't stop at the story of Horus. It's present in many Christian symbols. The halo around Jesus' head in religious art. That's a direct nod to the sun disk that appears behind the heads of Egyptian gods. Even the story of a virgin birth has its roots in Egyptian mythology, where Isis gives birth to Horus after magically conceiving him from her deceased husband Osiris. These parallels show that Christianity, far from being an entirely new religion, is deeply connected to the ancient Egyptian worldview. Now, one of the more intriguing aspects of Maxwell's research involved the symbolism of Saturn. According to him, Saturn plays a key role in the ancient religions and is often associated with Satan in later Christian texts. Saturn, the Roman god of time and agriculture, was also seen as the harbinger of death and darkness, the opposite of the sun's life-giving light. Maxwell pointed out how many ancient cultures revered Saturn as a powerful force but also a dark one. Saturn was often connected to sacrifice and control, and its symbolism still lingers today. He often referenced the hexagon on Saturn's North Pole, which has been linked to the occult and esoteric symbolism, used by various secret societies. He noted that Saturn's rings, which represent cycles and boundaries, symbolize control and limitation, a stark contrast to the sun's expansive, life-giving energy. In Christianity, Satan is often described as a fallen angel, a bringer of darkness. Maxwell argued that this figure could be seen as representing Saturn's influence, a celestial body tied to darkness, time, and the inevitable decay of the material world. The Eye of Horus appears on the US dollar bill, but most people don't think twice about it. To Maxwell, this was no accident. The all-seeing eye is a symbol that goes back to ancient Egypt and represents divine knowledge, insight, and the ability to see the truth behind illusions. And you can find many symbols in architecture, currency, and other aspects of public life as a way of subtly reminding us who holds the real power. The idea is that while mainstream religions might focus on the exoteric or outer meanings of stories and symbols, you can look at the esoteric or inner meanings, which speak to the cosmic forces at work behind the scenes. Now, one of the more fascinating elements of Maxwell's research is his focus on language and etymology, the study of where words came from. According to him, many of the words we use in religion have hidden meanings that connect back to ancient beliefs and symbols. For example, take the word Amen. Most Christians say it at the end of prayers. But he pointed out that Amun-Ra was the ancient Egyptian sun god. Is this just a coincidence, or is it a clue that much of Christian worship is rooted in sun worship? Maxwell also explored the word church. In his view, the word comes from the Greek kirk, which is connected to the Greek goddess who enslaved men by turning them into animals. This, Maxwell argued, reflects how organized religion has historically been used to control people's minds and keep them spiritually enslaved, much like these captives. The language we use, he suggested, often contains clues to deeper, hidden truths if we only take the time to look. He also made the distinction between Lucifer and Satan. Most people conflate the two, assuming that Lucifer is just another name for Satan. But Maxwell, drawing from ancient texts and symbolism, suggested that Lucifer is not actually the devil. Lucifer is the light-bringer, associated with the planet Venus. In Latin, Lucifer means light-bringer, and in many ancient traditions, Venus was seen as the morning star that heralds the dawn. In this context, Lucifer is a positive figure, one who brings light and enlightenment. It's only in later Christian interpretations that Lucifer became synonymous with the fallen angel cast out of heaven. Maxwell believed that this was a misunderstanding of the original symbolism. Satan, on the other hand, represents the forces of darkness, tied to Saturn, as we discussed earlier, the material world, and the limitations of human potential. Now, this distinction between Lucifer, the light-bringer, and Satan, the adversary, is crucial for understanding how ancient cultures viewed the balance between light and darkness, or good and evil. When you look at the bigger picture, what Jordan Maxwell was showing us, that the story of Jesus and the symbols of Christianity are deeply connected to the cosmic cycles that ancient civilizations understood. The solar cross, the Holy Grail, SUN versus SON concept, and even the miracles of Jesus are all symbols of universal truths. They represent the cycles of life, death, and rebirth that have been part of human consciousness since the dawn of civilization. And beyond that, Maxwell uncovered the hidden meanings behind the language we use, the symbols we see every day, often without realizing, and the role we play in unveiling this knowledge. His work wasn't about debunking religion, it was showing that religion is part of a larger cosmic story, one that has been passed down through the ages, with each culture adding its own layers of meaning. In the end, the story of Jesus is both personal and cosmic. It speaks to the human journey, our quest for light, for understanding, for salvation. And whether you see these stories as literal or symbolic, they reflect something universal. Our connection to the sun, the stars, and the divine cycles that shape all of existence. Humanfluence out.